Good. We just finished learning the laws of a woman giving birth. And if she gives birth to a male, then it says she, after 7 days pass, on the 8th day, they make a circumcision. And she's impure then she goes to the mikvah, and then she's impure for another 14 days. Impure, what does it mean? She can't go to the Holy Temple, but she can be with her husband. And if she gives birth to I'm sorry, 7 days, and then there's not 14, there's another 33 days. And if she gives birth to a girl, a baby girl, then she's impure 14 days. She can't be with her husband. And then there's added another 66 days. So it ends up to be when she can't go into the temple, but she can be with her husband in that time. And so it ends up 80. So we learned the laws of a woman giving birth and the impurity. And now we're going to learn the main topic of this week's Torah portion, and that is Tzoraat, which is very, very loosely translated as leprosy, for lack of a better word. It's called leprosy, but in fact, it's not at all, as we talked about so many times before. It's some sort of a spiritual disease, and the causes of the spiritual disease are discussed in the Torah. Some people say that there's 10 different reasons that could cause them. We'll learn the Kli Ykar, he'll talk about that. But I think let's also learn the laws. Today we'll learn the laws of exactly what is this Tzoraat. There's different colors, 4 different colors it can be, and then there's also deviations of these colors with a little bit of red in it, and there also has to be signs of impurity and signs of purity. And then there's weird laws, like for instance, if the whole body is covered with this color white, which is the sign of impurity, then it's pure. The whole body is covered. So there's also other strange laws, right? If a person that has Tzoraat goes into a house, everything in the house becomes impure. We're in the same room. And so let's go quickly through some of these laws. Maybe we'll go a little bit of the deeper reason behind these laws. And so let's do it a little bit quickly, and then we'll go through the mitzvot Hashem, the book of mitzvot Hashem, where he clarifies exactly what is the law involved over here. What is the law? What type of impurity is? How the Kohen has to check the person up, what he's looking for, what makes a person pure, what makes a person impure. Sometimes he has to be quarantined for 3 weeks, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 1 week. We'll see. Sometimes for all of his life. Now, of course, as we said before, this technically the disease in its complete state does not exist nowadays. In its spiritual state, it certainly does, but in its complete state, here we go. God spoke to Moses and Aaron, and he said, why did he speak to Moses and Aaron? Speak to Moses alone. So the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, he said, there's a sentence in the Torah that says in Devarim, later on, in the last book of the Torah, it says, Al pi kohen yokol riva kol nega. It says that the kohen is also the judges were the Kohanim, mainly. You take that the Kohanim. And according to the Kohen will be all arguments and all nega, all of these impurities. So therefore, God spoke to Aaron also, because like the rabbis say, that it says the Bar al Bnei Yisrael, why doesn't it say over here, speak to the Jewish people, right? It just says, lay more, say. It doesn't say, who is he supposed to say? Because the Kohanim, when they see the impurity, they make all the declarations. So God spoke to Moses and told him, right? Moses says, El Moses, God said, this is the law of the Metzora. It's not necessary to tell the Jewish people about purity and impurity, they already know it. And also not to Aaron, that he makes the sacrifices. What he wants to say over here is that the Jewish people, they have to know that this, what we're going to tell you now, is a secret thing. And it's not an obvious thing. Therefore, he's telling them, the Jewish people will read the Torah and they'll know that all of this business they have to take to the Kohen. It's not their business to decide or to make any logical decisions. This is all an illogical thing. And the Kohen, he's the one that he knows. He's the only one that can decide if it's kosher or not. And interestingly enough, as we said before, the law is that even if the Kohen is not a literate person, or let's say there is no Kohen around except for, let's say, someone who forgot everything or he's sick, nevertheless, it has to be a Kohen. And even if there's a genius Torah scholar that he knows all the laws, nevertheless, the Kohen is the only one that can declare a person impure or pure. Here we go. Adam, a man, when there is in the skin of his flesh, se'et or sapachat or baheret. Se'et, 3 different colors. Really, this is 4 colors. Se'et is one shade of white. Baheret is another shade of white, and sapachat is a subcolor. We'll talk about that. We'll see. It's a subcolor of both of them. And if it comes out that it is from the blight of Tzoraat, Tzoraat is the Metzora. So you have to bring him to Aaron a Kohen or to any one of his sons a Kohanim. And the Kohen sees the nega in this flesh. He sees this discoloration, and the hair of what's it called? The discoloration. There's hair in it, and it turns to be one white. And the appearance of this discoloration is a little bit deeper than the skin. This is a nega tzoras, and the person is impure. Okay, so we're going to see that there has to be a lot of things joining together. First of all, it has to be this shade of white. We'll see sometimes there can be a little bit of red in it, but shade of white. And this white alone is not enough to be impure. It has to also have a hair growing in it. A hair growing in it. White hair. And that's one thing. Another way is, instead of having hair, if like in the middle of it, it starts to get healthy. That's another sign of impurity. And another side of impurity, but that's after it's locked up, we'll see, is if it spreads out. If it spreads more. All right, so there's Seit. What do we say? Seit, Sapachat. Here. Seit, Sapachat, or Baheret. And we said Seit is one color of white, and Baheret is a little bit darker shade of white, and Sapachat is darker, a little bit darker than both of them. We'll see how it works out. Sapachat is like it's a sub white color of this and of this. So it says if it's Baheret, if the color is Baheret white in the skin and it's deeper than the skin, and the hair did not turn to be white, then if the hair in the middle is not white yet, then the Kohen tells the person he has to be closed up for 7 days, and he comes back on the 7th day. And if it's the same exact thing and it didn't spread out, then the Kohen locks him up another 7 days. In other words, it hasn't become healed, but it hasn't gotten any worse. Then the Kohen sees it now on the 14th day, on the second 7th day period, and the nega became sort of weaker, it didn't spread out, then the Kohen says it's pure. This is what's called mispachas. Mispachas is a pure and not defiled type of tzorat. Mispachas is okay. If it didn't, he closes it up. It's beginning the signs of impurity, but there's no white hair, and there's no healthy flesh in the middle. So he closes it up for 7 days, and if the doesn't spread out, and also there's no white hair in it, then it's called a mispachatz, and that's okay. That's okay. But if it pasaf tiseh, but if it spreads out after the Kohen sees it, then he takes it the second time, brings it to the second time to the Kohen. The Kohen sees that it's spread out, and he becomes impure. Okay, there's more laws, but let's start this off that way, and then we're going to go and learn exactly what these are in this book. We said Mitzvot Hashem, which we have it downloaded. Let's look a little bit of an explanation. What do you want to call it? A deeper explanation of what's going on. First of all, interesting thing. It says Adam ki b'soro. It doesn't really have to say Adam. I mean, this is really seemingly a superfluous word. It could have said Daber ben Israel ki yeh b'or b'soro, when there is in the flesh of a person. Why does it say Adam? So this Torah disease, if you want to call it, is only for Jews. Non-Jews can't get it. It's only for Jews. And now the Orach Chaim, the Reb Chaim ben Attar, as like we said many times, he even writes in one place that he's the Mashiach. The Baal Shem Tov one, he was in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, wanted to see him, because he also knew that if they would see together, that would give power to Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. He could have saved the world, but they didn't. It's a whole big long story how they didn't meet. Any case, let's see what he has to say. Adam kiyeh b'or b'soro. Pirush al derech, like it says in the Talmud Baba Metzia. Atem kroim Adam. You Jewish people are called man. Ve'ein umot ha'olam, but the non-Jews are not called man. What does that mean? How can that be? I mean, it says clearly in the Torah that the non-Jews were created in God's image. So he says, no. First of all, they're not called man because the non-Jews cannot get this negayim. They can't become defiled from Tzoraat. Here's a proof. Because here's the proof that they can't. It says in Masechet Negayim, in the very beginning, that in the beginning of chapter 11, I'm sorry, Modia, this lets us know that this impurity that is which occurs only in the Jews, it's only in the outside flesh of the Jews and not inside. Why? What exactly does it do when a person has this impurity? He can't go to the temple. Well, the non-Jews can't go to the temple either, ever. Only in the outermost places. Almost, that says, because the non-Jews, they themselves, is bechinas Tzoraat ominam, that they themselves have a certain type of impurity. In other words, the non-Jews, they're not really connected to what's called holiness. Only the Jews have holiness. That's the commandments. The commandments are holy. And even though there's a lot of Jews that sort of want to keep away from this, but that's what's called the non-Jew inside of each Jew. The Nefesh Yisrael, a Jewish people, because they were affected by the sin of the tree of knowledge, or if a Jew himself sins, so therefore this sin comes out into the outside skin, not in his meat, not in his flesh, not in his inside. That's what the rabbis say. Kitam Omer, that's what it says. Adam is telling you even a tinok, even a child, and etc. Okay, so then now he's explaining more, just that one basic idea. Very interesting. The Kli Ykar is also an interesting way of looking at this. Let's see. This Parshat Nagoyim, this whole thing of the Tzoraat, is right next to what we just talked about. Remember, circumcision, right? We said that a woman gives birth to a boy and she's circumcised. Here it says, what do we say? If a woman gives birth, Jewish woman gives birth to a male son, as on the 8th day, he's supposed to be circumcised. 8th day, unless there's extenuating circumstances, the child is sick or whatever, but it's supposed to be try to do it on the 8th day. Okay, so right after that, it talks about this, that's only by the Jews. And here we have also another thing which is only by the Jews, this thing of Tzoraat. It's right next to Milah. To tell you, Shamila dochet the Shabbat, Nagaim, that circumcision pushes away the Nagaim. It's forbidden. If a person has the signs of impurity, he's not allowed to cut it off. He can't cut it away. What if the signs of impurity are on a child and they're on his foreskin? Well, there's a negative commandment. You're not allowed to cut it off. It says, but it's coming to tell you that in this case, you are allowed. The positive commandment of circumcision, this overrides the negative commandment of the prohibition of removing the signs of impurity. Because anytime that one thing precedes the other one in the Torah, as the first one overpowers it. Therefore, the rabbis say, Shabbos was said before the laws of the Mishkan. Remember, we're talking about in Parshas Truma. It talks about Shabbos, and then after that, it talks about building the tabernacle. To tell you that Shabbos pushes away building the tabernacle, and they couldn't. As important as building the tabernacle was, they had to stop each Shabbat. They couldn't do anything to they couldn't do anything to make the tabernacle. Ba'al tzad remez, that's what the rabbis say, Gadola Mila, greatest Mila, that it pushes away the Negoim, because usually, what is Mila? Mila is removing the bad, removing the foreskin. Even though we learned, if you remember, yesterday we said it's mal to reveal Yudke. There was the Orach Chaim. Remember that we said yesterday? That the person of Mila was three things. For the tzaddikim, it's mal Yudke, to reveal the first two letters of God's name. We said for an ordinary person, it's to cling to God. It says a person is not circumcised, it's very difficult for him after he dies. And the third one is to remove the bad, negative. Well, let's talk about the third one, removing the negative. Mila, circumcision, is really to remove the foreskin. And essentially there's 4 foreskins. What do you mean 4? What does that mean? There's what's called the orla of the mouth. Orla tapeh. What does it mean, orla tapeh? It means that a person's mouth refrains from speaking holy things, doesn't reveal anything holy. When a person circumcises his mouth, then what's going to happen? He won't say lashon hara. He won't say bad things about other people. And some people say that that's one of the causes of this Tzoraat, is speaking lashon hara. We're going to see next week, says that you have to take birds and sacrifice the birds, because birds chatter all the time, to remind the person, because of this chattering, that's what brought on this impurity. So that's what's called the circumcision. It's called brit ha-peh, the covenant of the mouth. When a Jew speaks words of Torah, he cements the covenant between him and God. And when he uses his mouth for bad things, so that brings Negaim, that brings this Tzoraat, comes from Lashon Hara. And that Moshe also said that since I've come to talk in your name, only bad things have happened to the people. Like the Midrash says that anytime that Moses spoke, it was always with the main messages of Moses was always with us. Us is number 8. This hints at the bris milah, the circumcision. And also it says clearly that Az Yashir Moshe, another Az. Both of these are using his mouth for the proper thing, speaking words of Torah, speaking words of truth. It says that the sea split, Az Yashir Moshe, because of the circumcision that was given on the 8th day. And also there's a lot of things in the Midrash that are talked about Az. Az is talking about the number 8, and the number 8 we're talking about since I came to Paro, as the oral Sefatim, and it says that Moses sees that he was his uncircumcised lips. So that's the idea of the Mila, circumcision. And the fixes up also the mouth, orla the peh. Then there's also the orla of the heart. And then on the circumcision, that's what's called Mila and Priya. There's what's called thick skin, the thinner skin. Okay, let's just do this maybe quickly. I don't know if we'll have time to do the whole thing. It says that there's many, many reasons. This is what the Kli Ykar. There's many reasons which are given in the Talmud for this terrible disease, spiritual disease. And usually what it means is that it comes out, God wants to advertise it, especially to the person himself, so he knows to fix himself up. There's a Talmud, it says in the Talmud, tractate Arachin, it says that there are 7 things that cause this impurity. And they bring sentences to prove each one. And in the Midrash, he says that there's 10 reasons why these come. In any case, says the Kli Ykar, that I'm not going to deal with any things that are concealed with any. Let's just take the simple reasons that everybody knows about. We find 3 clear reasons that this impurity is caused. What are they? One of them is Lashon Hara, saying bad things, negative things about people. Shekain Perush Rashi, that Rashi says, Lama Korbu, why is it that they bring birds to purify the person? Because the birds always papet, they always talking. The same thing, the person talks too much, says bad things about people, harmful things. This causes Tzoraat. Second thing, al gasot ruach, egotism, haughtiness. Like it says, Yatar 8 errors, that says when that's one of the reasons why. When the person as Tzoraat comes to become purified, as he takes wood, he takes wood from a eris tree, a cedar tree. And Rashi says because he lifted himself up like a part of the process, the ritual, want to call it, of purifying this person, is that he has to take a cedar tree. A cedar tree is, because it's high, so he has to cast himself down like an azov. Azov is like a bush. We talked about that before when we talked about the paraduma, right? Last week, paraduma. The third thing is jealousy. Jealousy brings Tzoraat. Tzarot ayin. Like it says, Bosher Abayit, the rabbis say, Yechad Baito. Okay, in any case, on these 3 things, that's the reason why, right? He desires somebody else's money, he desires somebody else's properties, and that brings this disease on himself. Okay, so that's a little bit of the spiritual background of this whole thing. Let's go to the laws. The laws involved here. Ready? Here we go. Let's see how far we get. Okay, so we said this week's Torah portion, Tazria, that a woman, she gives birth, she has to be impure for a certain amount of time. If it's a male, so it's 7 days she's forbidden for her husband and also for the temple. And then there's another 33 days after that that's tacked on. She's permitted to her husband, but forbidden for the temple. It's called Dam Toar. And if she gives birth to a female, then she's 14 days forbidden to her husband and the temple. And there's 66 days that she's forbidden just to go into the temple. We learned all those laws, right? Okay, we learned that a person that's impure should not eat holy things. Here we go. Positive commandment. Shiahei amatzora tamei. That a person who has this tzoraat is impure, and mitame, and he makes other things impure. Like it says, Adam ki yeh ba'or basaro, seit o sapachat o beheret, etc. Then he has to go to the coin and etc. We learn. Now we're going to have a nice long explanation of what this is. So hold on, everyone. This is very legal, but it's very interesting. Tzoraat or basar, who means, what is this tzoraat? Sheyilbanu makom, or that becomes white, discolored white, a certain patch on the skin. Be'echad me'arba maros, in one of the 4 shades of white. That indicate this tzoraat. Hainu. Here we got 4. Loven she'ein l'mayla menu, the most white. This is the color of white snow. That's called beheret. Then there's another color of white, which is a little bit darker than that, and this looks like pure, clean wool. And this is called se'it. So we have beheret is the highest, se'it is the next, it's lower. Then there's a little bit, a shade of white, which is a little bit less than this, less white. And this is like the seed of heichal. This is something like the color of, let's change pages over here 1 minute. This is the color of like the plaster that was used in the temple to plaster the walls. This is a little bit, this is like an offspring of beheret, and this is called sapachat. And then there's a white color, which is a little bit less than that. And this is the darkest of all. And this is like the color of the white of an egg. And this is something like the se'it. So we have se'it and beheret. Beheret is the most white. And we have se'it, that's less white. And then we have an offspring of beheret, which is called sapachat. And we have an offspring of se'it, and it's also called sapachat. So in other words, we have 4 colors. The white of all of them is the white like snow, and the least white of all of them is the white of an egg, white of an egg. Okay. But if anything is white, but it's darker than the white of an egg, it's not tzoraat, but it's called bohak. That's what the Torah calls it, bohak. We're going to see there's another thing called mispach. It's also pure, but bohak, and it's pure. That's clean. But if there was a little bit of red color in one of these 4, then that's also tzoraat. That doesn't take away from its impurity. And this is called patoch. Bakal Amarot, all these 4 types, which actually become 8, because if there's a little bit of red in them, it's also, all these colors, they join together to a certain size. It has to be a certain size. What's the size? It's like the size of, I don't know, like a button or something. You'll see. What's this? We'll learn later on. Then there's a different type of a tzoros, which is called a michveh. Michveh is a person that got burned in his skin a little bit. A burn, and the burn, the burn on his skin spreads out. Nifshat ha'or Machmas hamaka. This is called michveh. This is called a michveh. Michveh means that the. Okay, now we're going to see what this is not yet impure yet. V'imoya saw michveh not because of fire. V'hushchat or, but that wrecked up the skin. Then it's called shachin. Shachin is any other type of a wound that comes on the skin, not because of fire. Fire is because of mikveh. Any other wound that comes on the skin, that's called a shachin. Okay, now it's not impure yet. This is just the grounds, beginning of impurity, but it's not impure. How big does this impurity have to be? The size of a grease. Nega grease. A grease is like the size of some sort of a. Anyway, it's like the size of a button, something like in Israel they have a shekel, a small coin. It's called a grease. It's smaller than a dime, but it has to be like a grease that's square. Namely, this is like 6 hairs and 6 hairs, but 6 hairs by 6 hairs. What does it mean 6 hairs? Hairs are like, if you look on your arm or something like that, you'll see hairs don't grow like an animal. An animal is like one hair right next to it. In people, usually the hairs are spaced one from the other. So if you can count 6, the distance between 6 hairs on one direction and then 6 hairs in the other direction, so that squared, that's the size that the discoloration has to be in order to become impure. If it's smaller than that, then it's not impure. Okay. So this is only laying the basis of the impurity. It's not impure yet. There are 3 signs of impurity in the skin. One of them is 2 white hairs that grow in the nega. And these 2 white hairs have to be the length that they can be taken out with the 2 tweezers. So they have to be a certain length. That's one option of how this discoloration can become impure. If there grows in it 2 white hairs. Number 2, michya basar chai. If in the middle of this discoloration, there's a little bit of healing. Vasir or michya kadash, and the shear, the size is like an adasha. Then this michya is much smaller. It doesn't have to be the size of like a button or something like that. This is like an adasha. Adasha is like a lentil, a very small pea. Shehu shir tzmichas shtei sarot. This is the size, this michya that grows in the middle, this healing that's in the middle. So this is about the size of the distance between 2 hairs, one from the other. This has to be in the middle of this. So you have the discoloration, right? Discoloration, this is only a sign for suspicion. Maybe something's going to happen. So if there grows up hairs, impure. If in the middle of this thing, instead of growing up hairs, it starts to heal a little bit, also impure. But it has to be a certain size. This healing has to be surrounded from all the other sides. It has to be surrounded all the way around. And the surrounding has to be also like the width of 2 hairs. So that's 2 options how this discoloration can become impure. Or 2 hairs grow in it, or an area grows, which is the size of 2 hairs, starts to heal in the middle. Number 3, pision. Pision, what does it mean? Sheer pision, that the discoloration spreads out. Even a little tiny bit. But this is only when the merit piece, it has to be spread out, but what spreads out has to be the color of a tzoraat. In other words, it has to be lighter, as light or lighter than the white of an egg. That's the darkest it could possibly be. And it has to go outside of this nega, but if it spreads inside of the nega, like for instance, tocha nega or basar. Let's say, for instance, the discoloration. Discoloration. It wasn't one complete discoloration. In the middle of it was some healthy skin. That's it. Well, that's kosher. It didn't grow up there. Okay. If then the discoloration grows over, doesn't mean it spreads inward and heals that up, that's not a sign of impurity. It's not a sign of impurity. A pision only is, it has to be spread outward, and it has to occur after the person is closed up for 7 days. In other words, if a person sees that he has a discoloration on his body, somewhere on his skin, and he goes into the coin looks at it. Does it have 2 hairs on it? No. Does it have the hairs on it? Doesn't have any hairs on it. Was it once whole and it grew healthy skin in the middle? No. So he says, okay. So therefore, we'll close you up for 7 days and see what happens. So close them up for 7 days and see what happens. If white hair grows, impure. If in the middle there grows a healthy little spot, impure. Impure. But what happens if it spreads out? Well, if it spreads out after these 7 days, it increases in size. The discoloration increases, then he is impure. But if it increases in size before the 7 days is finished, right? Let's say the coin comes in early and sees it, that's not a sign of impurity. Only after the 7 days is it a sign of impurity. Okay, so here we go. Kate said, how do we do it? A person that sees, that has this discoloration and in it is a white hair, or what we say, something grew, suddenly it grew healthy in the middle, when the coin sees it, that's called yachlit, and the person is impure. If there's this discoloration and there was not white hair, and there did not grow any healthy skin in the middle, right? That didn't grow in healthy skin in the middle, then the coin closes it up for 7 days. And the 7th day it comes to see it. If there's white hair, or there's a healed spot in the middle suddenly, or it's spread outward, then this person is impure and is called mukhlat. Now he has to remain that way until these signs go away. But that's next week. We're going to learn about that. That's next week's Torah portion. As soon as the sign goes away, then he has to go again to the coin, and the coin declares him pure, and he has to bring sacrifice and everything. If he closes them up for this 2nd week, and there is no hair, there is no spreading out, and that's the 1st week. Then he closes them up for a 2nd week, and then what happens if there is one of these signs that we said before, either there's hair or it makes it healing in the middle, or it spreads out, then he's tummy. If not, then the person is tor and he goes home, no problem. There's no such thing as being closed up for more than 2 weeks. But if after shepatro, if after the person is declared clean by the coin and he goes home to his life, to his normal life, then if one of these 3 signs suddenly pops up, even after a year, it doesn't make any difference, then this person is impure and he is closed up. But in the beginning, when the coin saw him, this nega, it spreads out, then he doesn't say he's impure. He closes it up, because he closes it up to see what's going to happen. Closes it up. In other words, to close the person up. He can't go home yet if it starts to spread out. But anytime that it spreads out, this impure patch that he had on his skin, if it spreads out and covers his whole entire body, then he is considered to be tahor. The coin says you're clean, you can go home. Interesting law. And tomorrow we'll learn a little bit more about these laws. Now, the reason that they're important, first of all, it's God's will. Right? Why God wants a thing like this, I have no idea, but He does. Like we said so many times, I don't know why God gives me two eyes and one nose. Why not two noses and one eye? Who knows why? But nevertheless, that's what God decided. And this is the same thing. God decided there would be man, and that man would be a difference between the Jews and the non-Jews, and the Jews would be susceptible to this strange Torah disease, which is called Tzoraat. And that's what we're learning about here in order to reveal even the smallest types of impurities that are in the Jewish people. So the Jewish people will be pure and holy. Have a good day with Mashiach now. We'll see each other, God willing, tomorrow at 8:15. 8:15 in the morning. Shalom uvracha. Refuah shlema for Yitzchak ben Sarah. Good.